Tales from the Loop is the gorgeous adaptation of the Simon Stahlenhag art book of the same name, currently streaming on Amazon. I'm Rob LaCouria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with Rebecca Hall, who plays Loretta, a scientist working in the facility known as the Loop. Rebecca, when you were offered the role, what were your initial or immediate impressions about how you wanted to portray her and who she is?
Well, my initial impressions were that it was very, the whole show presented as something particularly intriguing. The fact that it was based on artwork, or it was inspired by artwork, I found really exciting. And then when I read the pilots, I thought it was very, I don't want to give away anything, but I thought it was very interesting to play someone who is as smart and career-oriented and fragile as Loretta is at the same time. And I think that a lot of her, she's quite sort of socially stunted, I think, in some ways. Like, she's not very good at expressing her emotions. And the first episode does a very good job in explaining exactly why that is. And I thought that posed a sort of an enticing proposition for an actor, because in a way, when you're playing characters which are quote unquote difficult or complicated or not particularly likable, half the work is explaining why. And in her case, it was explained why quite early on, and so I had quite a lot of freedom to be as sort of awkward as I wanted to.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I always wonder whether there's scope for you to develop a character over the series, or whether she's very much set in stone and you're told who she is and you just play what's on the page. How did that work for Loretta and you?
I think there's a certain amount of, I think, in any sort of long running piece of art, I mean, it's different to shooting a movie. I mean, it's you shoot a TV show over, the course of 4 to 6 months, and I think nowadays there's no real way that you get all the scripts ahead of time. So there is a certain amount of things unfolding in front of you. But this one, Nathaniel Hawthorne, who was the showrunner, he definitely had the whole world and the whole story very, very precisely mapped out in his head, and he knew how Loretta was going to progress and how the character was going to be revealed to the audience. And part of what was so fascinating to me about it was how indirect a lot of that information comes at you. It's a very much a sort of ensemble world, and each episode takes on a different person within this community. But in a sense, Loretta's story and her family kind of sort of encompasses a lot of the other stories, and there is a lot revealed about those characters that isn't revealed in a particularly conventional sort of storytelling way, which I find really exciting.
Were you familiar at all with the source material, or obviously once you were getting involved in the project, you then thought it out? And what did you think of the source material? Because it's pretty amazing. It's a beautiful work.
It is. I had no idea. I didn't know what anyone was talking about. It was totally mysterious to me. That the idea that a TV show, that a TV drama, that a sci-fi drama, high concept, anything could be based on illustrations that aren't really illustrations for anything as much as sort of imaginative artworks, really. And it was totally novel to me. I mean, I never had anything like it, and I don't know what to expect, really. But I did get sent a file along, with the scripts, which included a link to all the artwork. And I looked at it before I read anything, and it was very informative, because there is a quality that comes off those art pieces that is very restrained and very specific and very sort of spare. And the show, I think, does a very good job of translating that into something that's cinematic.
Yeah, I love that austerity in the aesthetic that the illustrations have, and then it absolutely translates in the actual show. A lot of the feedback about Tales from the Loop is about its look and feel. I was immediately drawn into this beautiful world. It's so visually striking. What were your reactions? Firstly, because a lot of it was physical on set, and also when you saw it on your screen, what were your thoughts about how it looks?
Well, it just looks exactly like the painting. I mean, the illustrations. I mean, which is really a hard thing to do, to bring that to life and to bring the not just sort of a carbon copy, but to bring to life the feeling that you get from looking at those pictures in over the course of an hour's or 8 hours or whatever, however many hours worth of television. It's a kind of really deft trick on the part of the filmmakers or the showrunners or whatever. It's really unusual. I personally love it. I think it's very transporting and also refreshing, because it feels like it has this sort of quality of something that's a bit nostalgic and a bit, not even nostalgic, it's not the right word. It's like the uncanny. There's something familiar about it, but also there's nothing familiar about it. And it sort of makes you feel like you have to pay attention to details and you're not exactly on safe ground, but there's something mysterious and otherworldly about it that is enigmatic. And that's very much in keeping with the themes of the show and the feeling of the show and everything.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said that, because that's a feeling that I definitely had watching it. Because and then we may have some spoilers, so people watching, if you haven't seen it yet, maybe go away for a bit and come back. But we can't avoid it. But the show definitely touches on grief and getting older and human connection, especially between parents and children, and that nostalgia or retro feel. It just seems to work for that. Were there any themes in particular that you found was your way into Loretta and also into this particular world that was created?
No, I don't. Honestly, I don't think that there is a specific thing that I can point to. I didn't find it hard to find a way in. I think it was very clear to me who she was from how well it was written. I suppose the challenge for me was just finding the balance between someone who never says what they feel and doesn't have many scenes where it's revealed what's going on with her, to somehow communicate an arc that spans a whole lifetime, actually, from childhood to adulthood. And Trent, she's at heart, she's stoical, and those characters can be complicated to reveal their sort of interiority, because if you're busy being stoical, the whole point of what you've constructed is that you don't show anyone what you're feeling. So it's a fun game for an actor, because you're like, how do I show everyone what I'm feeling without showing anyone that I'm showing people what I'm feeling?
Well, I always wonder that, because obviously I'm not a performer or an actor, and I always wonder with actors, when sometimes you get material where you get to scream a lot and throw shit across the room, which must be a lot of fun, but then you have a character like Loretta who is so internalized. She doesn't say a lot, she sheds tears, and she's obviously a little broken.
Yes.
What are you doing to get us? Because I felt like I really empathized with her, but I didn't really quite know why.
Right, that's good. That's precisely the effect we were trying to go for. I don't have a good answer for you for that. I don't. All I can tell you is that acting is a truly weird thing, and I don't know. I mean, when I sort of conceptually think about it and say it how I just said it, like, how do you show someone's feelings who refuses to show their feelings? I don't know. There's not a trick to it. There's not a sort of, and now I'm going to reveal what's there, or I don't think about that. I suppose I think a lot about, I mean, every character that I ever play as an actor, I always think about what that person is trying to project to the world versus what they are feeling on the inside. And I think that is a very important thing to think about, because I think everyone has that. Everyone has the thing that they are trying to put out there, or how they want to be seen, or to think about how you're being seen, and then the thing that you don't necessarily know how to put out there, or that just reveals itself regardless.
Yeah, that's actually key to the feeling of empathy for other people, because you actually have to remember that we all have internal lives.
Exactly, which we all forget to do, actually.
Yeah, it's a massive problem in our world. I think this show is indirectly really good at pointing that out. And
It's true.
it's really true. I mean, I really felt for her. I had no idea why. I wanted to know more. And then, of course, this is the spoilery bit. So
because
everybody,
really terrible things happen to her. And so,
yeah, we then discover. But in the first episode, because the first episode is make or break. If it doesn't work, a lot of people are going to switch off. But it's so beautifully done, because obviously there's this interplay between the same person, younger and older. I thought that was such a novel concept. I don't think I've seen that much in other work. And I'm just wondering, what did you think about that dynamic? Because you're playing against another actor who is much younger than you, but you're playing the same person at different stages. It actually started to hurt my brain a bit. But what did you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I thought was quite brilliant about it, and how it was written, and has nothing to do with me or any of us, like really, apart from Nathaniel, is that he didn't. I think there are other genres, or not other genres, other TV films, whatever, within this sort of genre that do things in this vein, that are high concept, whether it's a sort of body swap phenomenon or a kind of things like this, or sort of meeting your older, younger self, whatever. And I think that in itself is the story. Like the event is that. And I think what is sort of brilliant about that episode, and what is brilliant about Nathaniel's way of constructing it, is he doesn't try and have his characters really talk about it, because the event itself is so huge and surprising that all they can really do is sort of stare at each other and gall and awesomeness, and in the real sense of the word. And and I think that is sort of that was the thing that I kept thinking about, is like, if I actually met my younger self, I wouldn't be able to get it together to say anything smart or give them any words of wisdom. I'd just be so transfixed by the whole event. And also, a lot of the stuff is done for you. You don't. There's no point, I think, as an actor trying to be like, well, I should mimic Abby's body language, or she should mimic mine, or like, actually, let's just play the scene. And I think actually an audience will accept a lot of the stuff. If you don't try and push it too hard. Yeah,
that's exactly right. Because the gotcha question could have been, what would you say to yourself if you met them? Right? That's not the point. Like, if I happen to meet myself as a 10-year-old, who cares what I would say? It would be such an experience. Like, you'd just be hugging them.
Experience it. Just have the experience.
Yeah. This show is about feeling and experience and empathy. And it's very hard to put in words, like, God help journalists having to write about it, because it's more about experiencing. And I imagine it would be like that for the performers. Did you find it ever took a toll on you personally, like when you were playing this character, or did you find it was easy to just shed her at the end of every day?
I really go back and forth on that question. There are some days where I'm, very affected and go home feeling sad because I've been in a sad place all day. And there are other days where it doesn't bother me so much. I think since I had a child, I try and I do better at shutting it down when the day is done, because I think it's not particularly healthy or useful to me as an actor. It might be useful to some people, but it's certainly not useful to me. I'm much better when I go home and forget about it. For me, you do all the work before you start shooting. You spend a long time sort of immersing yourself and thinking about a character, and then when you're actually doing the shooting, you turn up and you don't think about it too much and just do it, and then put it to bed at the end of the day.
I mean, that's like any profession. Like it's good to switch off, come home, and do your thing. So I'm glad you said that. Do you agree that TV and streaming affords actors, particularly women, more nuanced and interesting roles as opposed to what the studios are cranking out on the big screen?
Not exclusively actually, because I think Hollywood's going through a bit of a reckoning with itself, possibly because of TV and streaming, and knowing that people actually want sort of broader stories and broader representation than has historically been afforded everybody. And I wouldn't sort of say that in a sort of blanket statement, because I do feel quite optimistic about what's going on. But as a general rule, I think TV and streaming and all these new platforms have probably paved the way a little bit for that transformation to happen, because there is not such a reliance on box office returns, even though women characters in movies historically have made bank at the box office as opposed to the opposite. But that there's less of a pressure around that, or foreign sales, or whatever it is. So there is more room for innovation, or putting sort of slightly less conventional characters, conventional in the traditional sort of like white male sense. But I don't know. I'm loveful. I don't think it's. I think it's quite a period of change. Everything's in flux, And again, we're going to go through another period of flux now. So who knows what's going to happen on the other side of it?
It's crazy. But what I do like is, particularly if you look at your credits, you can do some beautiful, art house work. You can do a great streaming show, and then you can do Godzilla versus Kong, which. There's always room for a big blockbuster. That looks like a hell of a lot of fun. Was it?
I'm a firm believer in doing what seems fun at any given moment in your career. I'm speaking from a position of entitlement and good fortune in my career, but regardless, I've never really considered my career to be a sort of stepping stone situation where I take jobs for tactical reasons. It's always been a question of like, what's interesting, what's fun, what's going to take me to a place that I've never been to before, what's going to be good for my family, all those concerns. And so I never rule out anything on that basis.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good attitude to have. And my final couple of questions is about awards, because that's generally what we do at Gold Derby. And I remember you received a bunch of accolades. People were just beside themselves about your role in Christine and how wonderful it was and what people were saying. And so you've had a few nods from the British Academy for your TV work in the UK. So you've been there. You've felt the recognition. What does that mean to you when you get recognised by your peers or by an academy for your as a pat on the back?
I have a sort of complicated response to this, because sometimes you sort of think, well, it shouldn't mean as much to you as it actually does. And the truth is, it does mean something, because it's being recognised by your peers, and that is meaningful and significant, and it's beyond flattering. It's just an acknowledgement that the work you've been doing has been seen, really. And I think that's at a certain point in one's career, you're like, yeah, it's nice, and it means something to me. But that when that happens, it really does mean something.
That's what you want to hear, because like when someone says, "Oh no, I don't care," that's bullshit. Because
it is always bullshit.
If you're a chartered accountant and you win a special prize from the Chartered Accountants Association, you're going to cherish that prize for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah.
So
it's complicated, because I think artists are real weird people, and the truth is, like, it's like the old adage about reviews. You can have 2,500 great reviews, but the only one you remember is the one bad one. And similarly, if you're of that kind of mind frame, then the likelihood that you get an award and then you kind of go, well, it can't have been good if they gave it to me, versus like, there's a whole load of mind tricks that happen that I think everybody does care about it much more than
of course. And so then, like, from the extremes of the accolades received for Christine, you were nominated by the Hollywood Foreign Press at the Golden Globes. I think it was about 10 years ago for 50%. So that's a whole other thing because I've been to these awards. I know what they're like.
Yeah.
What was your favourite memory of being in that room with all those A-listers, with all the alcohol, and was it as fun as it looks?
I didn't go. I've never gone. I've barely gone to any award shows ever. I've had a really, unfortunately, for whatever reason, every time that I've ever got recognition for these kind of things or been on these sort of campaign trails, I have been doing theatre or pregnant or a number of reasons why I have never gone to any of these things. So I have no idea.
Oh my God, how inconvenient. So inconvenient. But, at least you got the nomination. So it's on your list. So that's something.
No, it was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, Rebecca, Tales from the Loop is so wonderful. I really recommend it to people watching this. And thanks so much for your time today. It was really interesting hearing your insights on the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Now, everybody go to Gold Derby, make your predictions. Maybe you want to pick Tales from the Loop. And while you're there, click subscribe. We've got lots of chats with contenders just like Rebecca.